Good morning, everybody. Rob here in Bakersfield, California, on the Softail Bar Hopper, and welcome to this week's Throwback Thursday. Today's episode is going to be titled, Don't Bogart That Joint. I'm going to tell you a little story about the time I was working out of Northern Division, and Internal Affairs tried to set the cops up and bust them. You wondering what for and how? Well, I'm going to explain that to you. Here's how it all went down. I was working up there in Northern Division, and it was about that time when anytime you'd arrest a suspect for drugs, first thing their attorney would do would come back and claim that the officer did not impound all the drugs in as evidence or all the money, and throw suspicion onto the officers and off of their client, the suspect. So Internal Affairs decided to do a little test and see if officers were actually skimming drugs or whatever off their bus and money, instead of, just telling the suspects to shut the fuck up and quit trying to pull this bullshit. I don't know exactly who started that whole deal, but I guess it got started back east. It was about the time all the cops back in Miami and shit were actually skimming drugs and money off their bus, and the cops in Chicago and Detroit and stuff like that were running around off duty and busting drug houses and ripping them off of their drugs and money. So yeah, there were crooked cops back east pulling all that shit. I didn't know any in San Diego doing that though. Anyways, let's get back to the story. So what Internal Affairs decided to do was they took and they rolled up a joint, and they would take and stick it on the dashboard of the patrol cars in between shifts. So when you came in off your shift, you're supposed to clean out your car, go in and impound all your evidence, and then the next officer coming out for the next shift, he's supposed to inspect the vehicle, make sure there's nothing left behind. If he finds something in the vehicle that shouldn't be there, like a joint laying on the dashboard or a knife or a gun under the seat, you're supposed to go contact that officer if he's still in there and have him take it and impound it for whatever case it belongs to. If he's already left, then you're supposed to impound it in the evidence room as found property, and then Internal Affairs goes after the officer that failed to impound all his evidence. And they can get anything from days off without pay to actually getting fired, depending on how serious it is. And yeah, there were a lot of times that at the end of shift, cops didn't do proper clean out underneath the back seat, especially, and you come out there and you pull the back seat out to check under it, and you'd find a knife or gun or drugs that was stuck back there by some suspect they'd taken off to jail that they didn't find in their pat-down search. And you'd have to go in and impound that in the evidence room as found property, and the other officer get in trouble for it. So I.A.B. was putting joints on the dashboards of the cops just to see what was going to happen. Some of them would find them, take them in, find the officer, give it to him. Of course, that officer would have no clue. He didn't know where the hell that came from. So they'd impounded it as found evidence. Some officers, rather than doing that, were just taking it and throwing it in the trash. Those officers, of course, got into trouble, because that's not what you're supposed to do. I had it happen to me. I found a joint on the dash, went in, the officer had already gone, so I impounded it as found evidence. We had one officer working out in Northern Division. He didn't find it. What had happened is the joint rolled off the dash down in between the dash and the windshield, down in a little area down there, out of sight. So he never found the joint. So he never impounded it as found evidence. So of course I.A.B. comes around to do their little thing, They hauled him in. They want to know what he do with that joint. He had no idea what they were talking about. They thought he was playing dumb. He didn't say anything about throwing it away. He didn't say anything about impounding it. He just said there was no joint and he didn't find it, so they figured he was lying. He got put off on administrative leave while they did their little investigation. And I don't know exactly how this came about, but they ended up taking the car to the garage, and the mechanic took off the dash, and down inside between the dash and the windshield there was the joint. So I don't know if the mechanic had seen it down in there, and of course the mechanic turned it in. So I don't know if he saw it down in there or somebody suspected it went down in there, if they did that, you know, to make sure or what, but somehow or other they got around to pulling the dash off and finding it. And the officer was returned back to full active duty. But that's just a little story about I.A.B. passing the joint around to bust cops. Now, did anybody get in trouble in that whole thing? Yes, a couple officers got in trouble, got days off without pay because they just took it and threw it in the trash can, according to what they said. And I'm sure some of you are thinking, oh yeah, right, they took it in the trash can. They took it home and smoked it. I don't know. I guess that's always a possibility. So, I hope y'all enjoyed my little story. If you did, hit the like button, give me some comments. I'm expecting quite a few little smart aleck comments off of this one, and that's perfectly okay, because I'm a little bit of a smart aleck myself. And yeah, I got accused of skimming drugs and money off of busts that I made, but I didn't. It was just one of those things that happened back in them days. You got accused of that, and you know, I don't know whether some people did or not, some cops did or not. That's always a possibility. I know they did back east. You know, all it takes is one cop to do something wrong and it gives everybody a bad name. So, come on back next Thursday for another story. See you then. Bye-bye.